Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Faith Stories. As you already know on this channel, all we do is we chronicle the faithfulness of God. We chronicle testimonies, that which God is doing in our lives. And by so doing, we hope that many will be encouraged. Many will be encouraged to journey with God and stay in His presence, not to just up off when it gets difficult. And I really hope that you'll be blessed by this session today. I read the story and I was personally blessed myself. So I really hope that you will be blessed by today's session. So on today's episode, I have with me Tiffany Sowah. Welcome, 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 Tiffany. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so um, just as a way of starting, I usually like to understand each person's journey before whatever challenge they came to, happen. Did you already know God? Can you just introduce yourself and tell us how your relationship with God started and how you just came to know who God is, who He was, and who He's going to be to you? So, over to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I think this is actually the first time that I've done a podcast interview exclusively about this testimony. Obviously, the testimony that I'm going to share has been a part of my life really since childhood. But this is the first time that I have been interviewed specifically and only just about my faith and my health journey. So thank you for extending the invitation and for having me on. The In terms of just kind of like how I came to know God and all of that, I come from a long line of ministers of the gospel. I come from, pastors and deacons and ministers and evangelists. So I grew up in church. I was definitely a church baby. My parents and or grandparents always made sure that we were attending church. So I come from a background and from a family where it's always been clear that everything that we have and everything that we are is because of God and God alone. So I gave my life to Christ at the age of 9, of my own free will. I was in a vacation Bible school week, a summer, Bible thing at the church, and I came home one day, or my stepmom had picked me up from this camp, and I told her, that I had decided to give my life to Christ when the instructors of the school were talking about Jesus. I wanted to know, more about this man named Jesus, right? Who was this person that they were talking about? And I felt a pull, I felt a tug to say yes to that invitation. Told my stepmom, she told my dad with me or for me, I don't remember. And then I was baptized before the summer was out. I lived with my mom full time, but we spent our summers with my father. And then at the age of 22, a friend of mine from college had been inviting me to come to this church for, over a year, right? Again, there was something on my life and something that people could see that made them want that made her want to invite me, right? I would pray with people, really speak life over people, but I wasn't living my life in a way that showed that I love Jesus and that Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior. So she would always invite me, and I finally went right before she relocated to go to another city for a job. And since that day, right, I visited one time in the month of May in 2011. Yep, in 2011, May 2011, I visited once. I told myself I was going to go and visit other churches and just kind of, shop around and feel around for where God wanted me to be. I did not go to church again for another month. The next time that I went back to that same church, and I was there and served for over 10 years. And at that church in 2011 was where I learned how to develop relationship with God. That I had always known religion. I had always known all of kind of like the protocols and the different things to do outwardly to show that I was a Christian, but it wasn't in my heart, that I was
Mm.
still making decisions privately and publicly that did not align with the fact that I said that I was a Christian. And there I was able to walk that out. I was able to learn more about what it meant to really live life as a Christian. And that's where I really developed relationship with God. And after that, it was on.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that. You said something. Religion is on one side. You can outwardly be doing everything. I call it gymnastics, where you're showing up, you're just going through the motions. God wants us to, He wants us to give our lives to Him, right? But we get to another level in Him when we start to develop a relationship with Him because He wants to, it's like a father and daughter relationship. You need to spend time, you need to build it. And for you, finding the right church helped you to understand what that meant and what you needed to do. I thought that was impressive, especially in this age where a lot of people don't believe in churches. I believe in whoever might be listening to this. You just gave your life to Christ. Pray about it. Ask your Father to order your steps. Right? God ordered our own step by asking our friend to invite her to the church. That was God ordering our step. I believe God plants us in the place where we're meant to be rooted. And that's what I picked up from all that you were saying. So if you were just out there listening to this, ask God, even if you're new in the faith, ask God. He's interested in your planting because He wants to have a relationship with you. It is not only about what your pastor says or what you hear others say. He wants to develop a relationship with you, and your planting is very important. Thank you very much for sharing that. So now let's go to the story of the brain. I don't know, the brain journey, the brain issue, and the surgery. How did you discover the issues with the brain? What was the journey like? Just walk us through, and how did you overcome?
Yes. So I had suffered from um really bad migraines from the time that I was a child. My paternal grandmother always tells the story of me when I was younger, and when I would get these random headaches and I would go to lay down and read the Bible. Literally, I had this purple King James Bible for children where they had all of the Bible characters and pictures and all of that. I remember the Bible very well. It had the gold writing on the outside. And anytime I would get this headache, I would just go and lay down and just read the Bible, not even really fully understanding what I was reading because I was an adolescent. So this was at age 7, 8, 9 years old. But I guess for whatever reason, it was soothing to me. And I would go to lay down and read the Bible. But those headaches and what was diagnosed as having sinus infections and like really bad sinus headaches, those started when I was a child. So in high school, I remember one time in high school, I had to be out of school for a week because the headaches had gotten so bad. And once again, I was diagnosed with a sinus infection. I remember my mom like not really believing me and thinking that I was trying to miss
Skip
school.
school.
And I told her, I'm like, this is I am having a debilitating headache and I do not know why. So that happened in high school. I went through college. I do remember that at a point, maybe when I was in high school, I had to stop riding roller coasters because when I would
Mm.
ride a roller coaster, I would get off with a splitting headache, with a headache that was so bad. So I stopped doing that because I couldn't figure it out and it wasn't enjoyable for me anymore because it became painful. So that happened in high school. In college, I don't remember having a lot of, like debilitating headaches, but I do remember kind of having dizzy spells and other symptoms that I would again just kind of associate with sinuses or my cycle or, something of that nature. So when I graduated from college, I was living on my own, and this was in 2011. I want to say at the end of 2011. I remember waking up out of my sleep one morning and I woke up. I had a really bad headache. I was really, really hot. I couldn't see. My vision was very blurry, and I felt nauseous and just very weak. Every symptom of Chiari malformation I felt in that moment. So I remember having to literally feel my way on the walls out of my bedroom. I went to the kitchen, and it's so interesting what I ate. I went to the kitchen and I got water and bread. That's what I ate. I have
Mm.
okay. So in the moment, of course, that made no sense to me. I think I was just grabbing what was available, but I ate water and
Yeah.
bread as the thing to kind of make me feel better because I was nauseous. So I thought maybe my stomach was upset. So I wanted to like settle it, but I eat the water and bread. I call into my job and I say, hey, I'm not feeling well, but I think that if I just lay down and maybe rest a little more, I'll feel a little bit better and I'll be in later. So that's what I did. I ended up taking a half day. I went back to sleep. I started kind of, gaining my composure as I was standing in the kitchen. I went and, checked myself out in the mirror and everything looked normal on the outside. So I went back to sleep, got up, started feeling better. Um, I went to the doctor. Again, this was at the end of the year. I think I had gone for like my physical or something because I've always just done it at that time. So I told them about this. And I also told them that I was having more dizzy spells. And I was also starting to have issue with depth perception, with being able to determine or perceive how far away something was from me. And I also was starting to have moments where I didn't feel safe at night. And I don't know, how that was connected. I've heard with other kind of like cognitive diseases and ailments that can be a thing where like nighttime is really hard for people and all of that. I've never read that specifically to Chiari, but I just know that I would feel unsafe at night. And I didn't have a car. I lived in a major city in Philadelphia in the United States. So I didn't have a car. So I was taking the train. And some nights, I would be coming home later in the evening when it would be dark outside. So I started having those concerns and feeling concerned about my safety. And I just took all of that to the doctor. I told the doctor, hey, I am concerned about this. I'm not sure what's going on, but as a single woman living in a major city, having to be out and about on public transportation at all different times of day and night, I don't feel safe like in my own body anymore.
Mm.
So she sent me to a neurologist. And I ended up going to one neurologist. That neurologist, and I'll never forget this. I know what hospital they were at. I will not name the hospital for the sake of liability, but I remember where I was. Okay. So I ended up going to this one hospital. And the doctor was very dismissive. The doctor, he came in, he looked at me and, kind of did, anybody who's ever had a neurological condition, they do the same test. It's the same, pull my finger, push, pull. It's like a testing of like pushing, pulling, and balance. So he did all of those and basically told me that nothing was wrong and that I was just suffering from migraines.
Mm.
And I remember feeling like he was very dismissive, that he wasn't listening to me. And this is a message for all women of color, that if you feel like the doctor is not listening to you, find another one.
Yes.
So I remember leaving just very discouraged and very sad because I didn't feel like his answer was the actual answer. So I go home. I have this medication that he gave me if the migraines come back. Couple more months passed, nothing happened. I got a severe migraine. I took the medication. It helped, but it made me very like groggy. You can't do anything. Anybody who suffers from bad migraines knows that that medication, it puts you down just as much as the actual condition can. So I still wasn't feeling safe in my body. That's what it was for me. So I go back to my doctor and I tell her, I said, hey, I need a referral somewhere else, to another doctor. I go to a doctor in another hospital, so another medical system. The same thing happened. I go back to her and I say, I'm going to find my own doctor. And one of my cousins, he is a cardiologist, and I had spent some time with him while he was on residency in Pennsylvania, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, this is the issue that I'm having. My uh doctors, they're not really listening to me. Can you make any recommendations? So he did some digging and found a doctor at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. James Schuster, at the University of Pennsylvania. I'll never forget him. And
Shout
he
out.
was yes, shout out to him. Shout out to him. So he was a neurosurgeon, but you can't typically go from like a primary care to surgery, right? They still wanted me to see a neurologist. So I remember him sending me to, or some way, somehow, I got to this neurologist. I had gone to see all of these doctors, ENT, all of these things, anything like head, neck, and throat, right?
Yeah.
I had gone to see those doctors, and they ultimately couldn't really figure out what was going on. And it was that last neurologist that said, hey, I think that you have a condition, a brain condition called a Chiari malformation. I had never heard of it. It took me almost a year, maybe a little less than a year, to get diagnosed. So I go back to the neurosurgeon. I tell, the neurosurgeon what's going on and, get all of my medical records transferred to him. And, he's ready to work. And he basically tells me that you have a choice. You can uh, do some natural things to kind of remedy the symptoms. You can change your diet, exercise, because the brain condition, when there's inflammation in the body, it's made worse. So he's like, there are things that you can do naturally. I can put you on medication, and anytime a headache comes up, and you can take days off from work and, do all of those things. But you will have to eventually have surgery, right? This is not anything that is curable. Even with the treatment, the condition will never go away, but we can roll out and execute a plan that will give you a better quality of life. And the idea of brain surgery, I was just like, yeah, no, I'll take all of the other things, not the surgery. I just couldn't wrap my mind around that. So I opted, for the other solutions. And a couple of months later, I was at home again, same apartment. I'm at home, I'm getting ready for bed. And this at this point, it is now 2013. So this is maybe February of 2013. I am in my room getting ready for bed, and I sneezed, and a pain that I had never felt before
Wow.
shot down the back of my neck, down my spine, and down the back of this arm to this pinky. I will never forget it. It like took me to the ground. I immediately started crying. I was freaking out because I had no idea what was going on. I called my mom and I'm like, I am on my floor in tears because this pain is so bad and I have no idea what caused it. So I take some pain medicine. The next morning, I call the neurosurgeon's office and I say, "Hey, this is what's going on." And the nurse basically tells me, "This is what we told you would happen. Like, this is the progression of this condition, and either you're going to have surgery." Or we can continue to treat it, but you're going to continue to have these crippling moments. I prayed about it. I was supposed to start a new job a couple of weeks after that. And I told them, I have to have surgery. They weren't willing to hold the job for me. And yeah, I opted to have surgery in March. And within a matter of weeks, they had me in for surgery.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
That's that's quite a journey. So, can you, before all of this started, you already started building your relationship with God. What role did that play in all of this journey? What role did your faith play? And what role did that relationship that you already built with God, what role did it play? And how did you see God in all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it played a major role because I had already been building my faith. I was also going through other things aside from this brain condition. So I first had an inkling that something was wrong when I started not feeling safe in my body. That was in 2011. And then by 2012, I had started my first business and, was running that. I had been terminated from my job in 2012 as well. So now I'm self employed in my business. It wasn't my plan. I was unexpectedly, self employed. And, so I had that going on. My car wasn't working. Like there were all of these different things that were going on, but these things were helping to build my faith in God. I saw what it was for God to provide for me supernaturally. I saw what it was for God to direct my path in building my business. So there were other things that were going on in my life aside from dealing with this brain condition and this diagnosis that were helping to build my faith. I was already in a position where I was having to talk to God a lot, right? That I was having to pray a lot because I needed God desperately in a way that I had never needed Him before. Um, so my prayer life was increasing, my faith was increasing. I was learning more about what it really means to have relationship with God, understanding that God is not a genie, that He is not just up in heaven magically granting wishes and things of that nature. I started learning, it took me a while, but I started to understand the importance of obedience and being able to discern when God is telling you something. So I was very, very early on in my relational journey with Christ. The further that I've gotten, the more I realize how immature I was and how early this happened in my journey. But I came to know Jehovah in his different capacities, right? As Jireh, as Rapha, as Nisi, as the one who, fights for me and defends me. um so having that faith, right, that relationship, I was already in the process of building it. So I wasn't building it out of a place of need. By the time my surgery came around, I already recognized that I needed God, not that I just needed something from him. And I was bold. I was brave. I felt so full of faith when I knew that I had to have the surgery. I took it to God, and I was confident. I said, God, I want a different quality of life, that I want something different. I felt like I was far too young to feel unsafe in my body. I felt that my body was turning against me at such a young age. I was 23, 24 when I had my brain surgery. So I was very young. I was diagnosed at 22. And I think I had it right after my 24th birthday. And, there were a lot of things whew, that I just took to God, and I chose to believe him for more. I chose to believe that wouldn't be my life at such a young age. And I was raised in West Baltimore, in the Northeast, right? So I was raised in the hood. I've never been a scary person. So anytime a challenge, has presented itself, I've never been afraid. I've never been afraid. And now, like with that trust in God, I wasn't afraid in the moment that I decided to say yes, right? In the moment that I decided to say yes to having the surgery. One of the things that was very important to me was to be mindful of having to manage other people's faith, because, although I wasn't scared, of course, my parents were terrified, right? I will say that neither one of them had faith at the level that they do now, that their faith was also built up through this. And of course, they were concerned about, their only daughter having brain surgery. And this was also a condition that we had never heard of before. We had to do a lot of research, second opinions, ask questions, all of those things. And, you know, eventually settled. And my mom, I remember her like wanting me to come home to Baltimore to have the surgery there. So it would be kind of easier for her to take care of me. And I said, after everything that I've been through with the doctors, I have to believe that God led me to this doctor. I believe that I am in the right place for my treatment of this and to
Mm.
be cared for it, and we're invested, right, me and my medical team. So we move forward with that plan. I still have the email where I mapped out the entire plan and told my parents like, this is what we need to do, this is what needs to be in place, because I was also full-time in my business. I had a team, I had clients, like all of these things. And it was, I believe that April 1st, 2013 was a Monday. I would have to look back at the calendar, but it was the prayer the Thursday before my surgery. My church had prayer. I believe it was every Thursday at 6 a.m. And I remember pressing my way to prayer. And on that day at the altar is like when I finally broke down. I think the magnitude of what I was facing became evident. And um, I just, it just hit me. And I told God, I said, I recognize that this is a big thing. This is not small. I'm having brain surgery. Um, but I promise. I don't think I've ever made a promise to God before or since, to be honest. But I promised God that if He brought me out of the surgery with all of my faculties, with all of my understanding the activity of my limbs, and that if He blessed me with a better quality of life, that I would spend the rest of my life living out loud and on purpose for Him. I didn't understand the magnitude of the promise that I was making at that time, but I meant it. Um, And anytime that my life has gotten off track from the fulfillment of that promise, God has held me at my word, and I'm so grateful that He has. But yeah, it was that Thursday before my surgery that I was like, okay, so this is actually happening. And I lost it at the altar. And yeah, that was that.
You know, it is interesting how God allows affliction. He allows certain things in our lives to launch us to purpose.
Yeah.
If maybe if this hadn't happened and he just woke you up and said, Tiffany, Tiffany, I want you to live your life out loud. I need you to do this. You would have questions and be like, God. But because he walked you, it was a journey. And
Yeah.
he revealed himself to you through the journey, just the same way he did to the Israelites. He took them
Yeah.
out. He revealed himself as the deliverer. He revealed himself as the provider. He took them through the stages to launch them into the land of destiny, to launch into a place of purpose because he wants you to have such grounding so that you have, you're well planted. And it's interesting that you said that this experience helped your parents to even build
Yeah.
their faith. Wow. I know that
Yeah.
affliction is not something that anybody prays for. Trauma isn't something that we want, but God sometimes allows it to give
Yeah.
us that foundation, to give us a story. You don't, it's not just knowing the God of the Bible. When they mention God as a healer to you, it is personal because you have lived through it. It is your testimony,
Mhm.
and how you will be sharing it with people is different from someone that just read it in the Bible. Wow. When you said that your
Yeah.
parents' faith was built through this experience, I'm like, wow, just the journey of one. God helped, He
Yeah.
used it to just help even so much more to come to a better understanding of who He is and help them to be positioned for what is to come. You know,
Yeah.
so you did the surgery. Did everything went well, and you came out good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it went well. The surgery did take a little bit longer than expected on the day of. Um and I remember, so when you have a brain surgery, and I think maybe heart surgery, but I know for a fact, like a surgery on the brain, they actually wake you up in the operating room to make sure that like
Yeah.
everything is still working and functioning like neurologically. So I just remember um that hearing my nurse's voice, and it felt so loud, like she was screaming my name, right? Of course I just had brain surgery, so I'm like, why is she screaming? And I just remember her calling and saying, Tiffany, Tiffany, and asking me like questions. They'll ask like, do you know what day it is or where you are and like what year it is or something like that. And she asked me those questions, and I was, of course, groggy under heavy anesthesia. And I remember before I drifted back off, um, I just said, God, you did it. You did it. And then I do remember kind of waking up again when they were wheeling me out of the operating room, because I remember passing through the doors. And I kept telling God, like it's on, like I didn't forget my promise, I didn't forget what I said to you, that you kept me, you did what you said that you would do, um and I'm here, and thank you, Jesus. That's all. I just started thanking God that I was still here, and I, like, on the inside of me was just smiling. My recovery went better than expected. The first day of ICU was a little touch and go, um because they keep you like really really heavily sedated, um and it's really it's a dangerous place to be, but we know that anesthesia is in general, but it's kind of teetering like on the edge of consciousness and unconsciousness, right? So there would be a machine that would kind of like beep, and the best way that I can explain it, I know this isn't medical terms, is like, I guess maybe when I was drifting too far out of consciousness, it would alert the doctors. So I remember hearing that machine going off. Like that first day, it was going off a lot. I was completely just like out of it. And so the first day in ICU, but the second day, they wanted, I had to use the bathroom, right? And they wanted to insert a catheter, and I wouldn't let them do it. I made them literally carry me from the bed because I'm like head wrapped, like a limp body, carry me from the bed and put me on the toilet because I couldn't, like, I was aware enough that I couldn't bring myself to, like, use the bathroom in that way. So, like, I was up in ICU, even though I like wasn't, technically supposed to be. So, in any event, I was out of ICU maybe within 24 to 36 hours. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. Within a couple of days, maybe by like day three, I 3 or 4, I was up and like able to talk, still very sleepy, but like able to talk. I was feeding myself. By like day 5, I think I was able to bathe myself. My mom did help me, but I was able to like get in the shower. And then I want to say also on like day 4 or 5 is when I went to physical therapy. And there are certain markers that they're looking for you before they can let you go home. And excuse me, they cleared me. I want to say I was out of the hospital in 7 days. Like on day 7, my mom was willing me out like to go home. And I do remember the ride home was really, really, really rough. It was really bad. And her trying to just like get me in the house and all of those things. Because the roads are like super bumpy, and any little thing,
You felt it.
sound, feeling, oh, it was magnified. It was such a rough ride home. I don't think I got in the car again for like another month. Like it was so bad because I had an event to do. I didn't do anything. I literally sat there, looked pretty. My mom did my hair up with like a scarf to cover the fact that I didn't have hair in the back of my head. But I was up and like ready to go. Within 30 days, I was back on the road. I wasn't driving, but my team was driving and, did everything for me for the event. And then I want to say, maybe within 30 days too, I got the staples out. And all they kept saying, because doctors don't want to say you're a miracle, right? They just kept saying like, you are a rock star. Like you really rocked this healing, you rocked your recovery, every part of it. You've been doing everything that you're supposed to do, eating healthy, all the things. And I just kept telling them, I'm like, this is God. Like, I know you all might not be able to say it, but I recognize who is at work here. That
Mm.
literally in 7 days, I was out of the hospital. And within 2 weeks, I was technically back to work,
Wow.
limited duty, but yeah,
Wow.
back to work. So it went well.
Wow. So how this entire experience, how has it shaped your life? Like, did it change the trajectory of your life from there? Like, how has it impacted everything that you did afterwards?
Yeah. So I was getting emotional when you were talking a few minutes ago because I'm just thinking about even now in my life how I am still living out this promise to God. And I think that as I've grown spiritually, my language has changed. And again, I've gotten deeper in my obedience to God and, really following God wherever He leads. And, living here in Ghana, I was sharing with you before we started that this was not the plan. Like, and when I say not the plan, I mean, all right. And I love me some Ghana, but living here full time, that was not the plan from the beginning. And but I see even to this day what God is doing in my life. I see what it is to really live a life that is sold out for His vision. I started telling God many years ago, maybe back in like 2019, that I would follow wherever he leads. I will go where you go, say what you tell me to say, and do what you tell me to do. My only prayer request is that you not forget the desires of my heart. And at the time, of course, I was desiring for marriage and, you know, just different things, right? That I was willing to give up my version of what I thought my life should look like for his version. And that the only request I had is that I get to enjoy some parts of it. Like give me some things, that I get to enjoy as well. And I still pray that prayer. I still declare it. It's on the prayer wall, and me and my, now for me and my husband. But all of that, this lifestyle of obedience, this lifestyle of being sold out for God's vision, this lifestyle, because it's not a decision that you make all at once,
Mm,
that it's a series of daily decisions, that daily we choose to follow God. Daily, our minds are renewed and our spirit is renewed and our hearts are cleaned up daily, sometimes multiple times in a day,
mm,
that this has to happen. And that it is more glamorous than it sounds. Um, it's easier, it looks easier than it actually is. But I am totally committed and sold out for God's vision for my life, our lives. Um, and that promise that I made to God, to that if he would save my life, as if he hadn't already saved it so many times before, but that if he would save my life, that I would spend the rest of my days living out loud and on purpose for him. And I've only matured in that. It's only gotten deeper and stronger, and I've gotten new language for
mm,
that and what it really looks like. Because again, I didn't really know what I was saying when I said it, but I knew that I meant it and that that's what I felt. And just to see how that promise continues to come alive in my life, I am just so grateful to God. God has blessed me to do everything that I've wanted to do. Everything, everything. And he's kept his promise, his end of the deal, what I asked for. Um, and sometimes we gotta renew commitments because we're human. And last year he called me to a renewal of that commitment, and I'm living it out now. And I just told my ministry community maybe a couple of weeks ago that I would do it all over again. Every single part of it, every single part of it. For it to end up here, I would do it all over again. I would.
wow,
Yeah.
that's wow. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
God does. It keeps his end of the bargain. It does. It keeps his promises, and he's a faithful father.
Yeah.
And he wants us to live beautifully. He wants us to
Yeah.
live our purpose. Mm,
Yeah.
that's the desire of his heart. And I know a lot of people have misconception that walking with God is hard. Yes, it is hard. It is not a
Yeah.
misconception, but it is sweet as well. It is not only
Yes.
hard and bitter where you are suffering, where you don't have money, you can't take care of yourself. That is the
Yep.
misconception. No. He is a good father. He's a faithful father. It is,
Yes.
when we are not doing well, it shows our name. It is like a father that gave birth to a child, and you're on the streets
Yep.
roaming around homeless. They would ask in Africa, who is the father of this person? That is how it is to God.
Yes.
So he loves you, he cares
Mhm.
about you. I don't know who you are listening to this. He loves you, he cares about you. And he's not looking to bring you to him for a life of sorrow, for a life of abundance. He said, I want you to have life more abundantly. And that's all he's seeking to do. So to just bring this to a close, there might be people listening to this that are struggling with faith, they're struggling with God because they think being with God is not cool, or they're just struggling with life generally, or they have some health challenge, or just some verdict from the doctor, what would be your advice to people like that struggling?
Mhm.
um, what words of encouragement would you share with them at this moment?
Yeah. I would say that if you are struggling to believe, if you are struggling to have faith, my word of advice would be to take or to try, right? To try God in one area, right? Not to test, um, but to take just an area of your life. And this was my journey with God and becoming more and more obedient. I just started with one area. I am, I think, a very real Christian. I hope to just always be very real. And I'm very honest and real in that it is a journey and you don't consume it all in a moment. Um, but so I would encourage people to take one thing and to try believing God in that area, not for what you want, but to really seek God and ask Him for His will in that particular area of your life. To ask God to help you trust Him, to ask God to help you believe and to have faith. Because when you're in a place when your faith is low, sometimes all you have is help me, God. And for as long as I have been walking with Jesus and journeying in relationship, last year, 2023, I had to ask God so many times, just help me. Some days I didn't have, most days, I did not have more than, God, I need your help in this area. I need your help with this thing. So I would challenge you to pick an area where you trust God and you believe God for His will, not what you want and how you think it should play out. And watch what God does, not only in the situation, but in your faith. I'll give a quick example and then I'll be done. A lot of times, an area where people tend to like kind of want to try God is maybe you have a sick relative, right? And your version of trying God is to go to God and say, if you're real, heal this family member, right? This is what we pray. If you're real, heal this family member, save this family member. But the issue is that our version of healing and saving can sometimes look different from God's. And this is why it is important that we discern what God wants in that area, not what we want. Our version is that person is going to get better, they will be healthy, and they will continue to exist on earth. But if we are Christians and if we believe God and if we believe in the Bible, then we know that the real victory, no matter how hard it is to accept, death is not easy, but the real victory and the real win and the real healing and the real saving is for that person to be in heaven with God at His appointed time, right? I have watched God heal people miraculously. I mean, we're talking about health today. I'm talking about my own health journey, a major thing. And even when I asked God, I said, if it's your will, if you will do this for me, I will do that for you, leaving the possibility, as hard as it was, leaving the possibility that His will was not for me to make it off the surgery table. And that was hard. It broke me down. But I tried God in that area and I watched Him keep His promise, not just to heal me on this side of heaven, but to also bless me with the other things and the things that are not tangible and that are bigger and deeper than even the healing from the surgery. That was just an external thing. Try God with one thing
Hmm.
and see what happens in you and for you.
Wow, thank you. Try God in one thing. And even before you realize it, you have surrendered your life and you're like, God, take it all. I
Yep.
cannot help
Yep.
myself, And that's what, I always say this, that God is not a magician, right? He doesn't just do abracadabra. It is a journey with us because the journey produces endurance. It produces certain things. So it takes us through the journey because it is producing, is shaping us every single day to the point where you're like, God, take it all. Even before you
Yeah.
realize it, and you look back and you're like, what? Me? I said, take it all? Okay. I've grown. And
Yep.
that is growth. And that is growth. And that's the place of relationship. He has called us into a place of relationship with Him, not religion, not just saying I'm a Christian, but you don't have a personal altar, you don't have a personal place of relationship with Him. I hope you've
Yep.
been so blessed by this. I don't know if you have any last words before we wrap this up. Okay. Thank
Nope.
you very
Nope.
much for sharing your story with us. Your story where you were launched into purpose. It warms my heart, to just listen to it all over again. And we just can't wait to see, all that God has in stock for you in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us on this platform. I'm sure I have been so blessed. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that will watch this and they will be encouraged and be super blessed as well. So, thank you everyone for watching today's episode. I hope that you have learned one or two things, and I hope your heart is encouraged. I hope you've been able to get hope, faith, out of all of this. And above all, you're encouraged to stay with God. Stay with God, find God, hold on to Him, and be vulnerable. Be vulnerable with Him. Is your Father, is your Father. And He wants nothing else but to just be your Father. So trust Him, hold on to Him. Until we come your way again on next episode, God bless you.